Welcome to Cryptid Monologues. Let's dive into a world where myths meet imagination. Here we unravel chilling tales of cryptids, Bigfoot, Wendigos, Dogman, skinwalkers, and more. These stories are crafted to ignite your imagination. These stories are purely fictitious, and names and/or events are purely coincidental. If you like these kind of stories, please give a like and subscribe. Click on the notification bell to stay up to date. Thanks for listening. Let's get into it. Part 5. A Season of Grief and Survival. The golden hues of fall crept into the valley, painting the trees in shades of amber and crimson. The air carried a crispness that signaled the coming of winter, a season Etienne and Tahoe both dreaded and welcomed. Days stretched into weeks since Aida's death, and the wounds in their hearts were raw, though their determination to endure grew stronger with each passing day. Etienne found solace in the monotony of preparation. He repaired traps with meticulous care, sharpening blades and reinforcing springs. The simple, repetitive tasks allowed him to push away the weight of his loss, if only for a time. Tahoe, too, buried his grief in action, ensuring their stores of food and firewood were ample to survive the harsh months ahead. The cabin, though quiet now, became a place of remembrance and resilience. Aida's absence was a constant, haunting presence, but her spirit seemed to linger in the warmth of the fire and the way the wind whispered through the trees. Etienne often found himself sitting by the carved pine where she rested, speaking softly as though she could hear him. As the first frost blanketed the ground, Etienne and Tahoe set out to prepare their trap lines. They chose a new route this season, venturing deeper into the valley to a place they had only heard about from other trappers. The rumors spoke of abundant game, but warned of treacherous terrain and an unforgiving winter. For Etienne, the challenge was more than a necessity. It was a way to keep his mind from dwelling on the past. The days were long and grueling. They trudged through dense forests, marking trails and setting traps in the hopes of a bountiful season. Each morning they checked their lines, hauling in beaver, fox, and ermine. The rhythm of work was steady, its demands leaving little room for idle thought. Etienne often found himself lost in the wilderness, not in fear, but in focus. The land, despite its hardships, offered a quiet kind of healing. The sharp cries of hawks overhead and the rustle of leaves underfoot reminded him that life persisted, even in the face of loss. Tahoe, too, seemed to find peace in the land. Though his grief was evident in his somber demeanor, he took on the role of protector, watching over Etienne as they ventured deeper into the wild. Their bond strengthened in those weeks, forged by shared loss and the unyielding will to survive. By mid-fall, the cabin was stocked with furs and provisions. The work had been fruitful, but Etienne knew the true test lay ahead. Winter in the Rockies was merciless, and survival required vigilance and preparation. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Tahoe broke the silence. "Aita would want us to keep going," he said, his voice steady but tinged with sorrow. Etienne nodded, his gaze fixed on the flames. "She was always stronger than me," he admitted. "She'd find a way to make even this valley feel like home." Tahoe managed a faint smile. "Then we owe it to her to try." The two men raised a silent toast with tin cups of weak whiskey, their unspoken promise binding them. As fall gave way to winter, the valley transformed. Snow blanketed the ground, muffling the world in a quiet stillness. The days grew shorter and the nights were long and cold. Yet Etienne and Tahoe pressed on, their resolve unshaken. Each trap they checked, each fur they skinned, was a small victory in the battle against despair. The wilderness, harsh as it was, became a canvas for their resilience. And though the shadow of Aida's death lingered, they found strength in honoring her memory through their perseverance. As the first true storm of the season rolled in, Etienne stood outside the cabin, watching the snow fall. He thought of Aita, her laughter, her warmth, and her strength. The mountains had taken much from him, but they had also given him something he could not yet name, a deeper understanding of life, loss, and the unyielding force of nature. When Tahoe joined him, the two stood in silence, their breath visible in the frosty air. The wilderness stretched before them, vast and unrelenting, but they were ready. Together, they would face the winter, carrying Aida's spirit with them as they fought for survival and a new sense of purpose. The return of the howl. As the snow began to melt and the rivers roared back to life, Etienne and Tahoe welcomed the arrival of spring with a bittersweet sense of renewal. The harsh winter had tested them in every way, but they had survived. Furs were bundled and ready for trade, the cabin repaired after months of brutal weather. Yet, with the thaw came a haunting reminder of the wilderness's darker side, a new howl that echoed through the valley, distinct and bone-chilling. The first time they heard it was on a moonlit night, as the two sat by a modest fire outside the cabin. The woods, usually lively in spring, were unusually quiet. Then it came, a low guttural sound that rose into a mournful wail. Etienne froze, the hair on the back of his neck standing on end. "That's not a wolf," he muttered, his voice barely audible over the crackling fire. Tahoe, sharpening his blade, paused mid-stroke. His dark eyes narrowed as he stared into the shadows. "No, it's something else," he said gravely, setting his knife down and reaching for his bow. The howl came again, closer this time, resonating with a primal menace that seemed to vibrate through the ground beneath them. Both men stood, weapons in hand, scanning the darkness beyond the firelight. The following days brought no sign of the creature, but the eerie howls persisted. Each night the calls grew nearer, echoing through the valley like a phantom's lament. It wasn't long before the signs began to appear. Tracks too large for any wolf, claw marks gouged deep into trees, and traps left mangled and empty. Tahoe's usually calm demeanor grew tense, and Etienne found himself checking the musket more frequently, ensuring it was always loaded and within reach. The air carried a weight, as though the valley itself was holding its breath. One morning they discovered a kill not far from the cabin. A deer torn apart with a ferocity that left no doubt about the predator's strength. The carcass was left uneaten, as if the attack had been driven by rage rather than hunger. "This isn't just a beast," Tahoe said as he studied the remains. "It's a warning." Etienne nodded, his jaw tightening. He had read about territorial predators before, but this felt different. This felt personal. As the days lengthened, so did the boldness of the creature. One night, Etienne woke to the sound of heavy breathing just outside the cabin. The fire had died down, casting long, flickering shadows on the walls. He grabbed his musket and crept to the window, peering out cautiously. In the pale moonlight, he saw it, a hulking figure with a lupine head, its glowing eyes fixed on the cabin. Its fur bristled as it sniffed the air. The movement slow and deliberate. Etienne's breath caught in his throat. He could hear its claws scraping against the earth as it prowled closer. Tahoe stirred, instinctively reaching for his bow. "It's here, isn't it?" he whispered. Etienne nodded, motioning for silence. They stayed frozen, listening as the creature circled the cabin. The floorboards creaked beneath them as they shifted their weight, and the beast let out a guttural growl. The next few moments passed in agonizing tension. Etienne tightened his grip on the musket, ready to fire if the beast breached the door. But instead, it stopped, its head tilting as if listening to something only it could hear. Then, with a final growl, it retreated into the woods, its heavy footsteps fading into the night. By dawn, both men knew they couldn't let this continue. The Dogman, or whatever it was testing them, asserting its dominance over the valley. "We can't run," Tahoe said, his voice firm. "If we leave, it'll only follow. We have to face it." Etienne hesitated, his mind racing through the stories he had heard and the journal he had found in the abandoned cabin. If we fight it, we have to be smart. It's stronger, faster, but it's not invincible. Together, they devised a plan. They would lure the creature into a clearing near the river where they would have the advantage of open ground. Etienne prepared his musket with extra powder and shot, while Tahoe crafted a series of crude but sharp-tipped stakes to drive into the earth. The stage was set, but the question lingered: would they survive the coming confrontation? As the sun set and the valley fell into shadow, the howls began again, closer and more menacing than ever. The two men stood side by side, weapons ready, their breaths steady but their hearts pounding. The hunt was on. The rise of the Dogman hunters. The confrontation with the Dogman marked a turning point for Etienne and Tahoe. The creature's relentless pursuit had forced them into a corner, testing their courage and survival skills. When the battle ended, leaving the clearing bloodied and the beast mortally wounded, they realized something profound. This was not just about survival. The Dogman was a creature of legend, a force that others might encounter, and they had proven that it could be fought. As the sun rose over the valley, the two men stood over the body of the slain beast, its massive form now still. Etienne looked at Tahoe, his face a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. "This isn't the last of them," he said, his voice steady despite the gravity of his words. Tahoe nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "We've seen the signs. There are more out there, and they will hunt, unless we hunt first." The decision was mutual and unspoken. They would no longer be passive trappers, merely surviving in the wilderness. Instead, they would seek out the stories, track the creatures, and rid the wilderness of the Dogman. The change in purpose gave their lives a newfound energy, one fueled by the adrenaline of the hunt and the hope of protecting others from the same horrors they had faced. They returned to Fort Carlton with the Dogman's severed claw as proof of their encounter. The sight of it drew gasps and murmurs from the traders and settlers. Whispers spread quickly, stories of the beast and the men who had killed it. Etienne and Tahoe found themselves both feared and admired, their reputation growing with each retelling of the tale. From there, their journey took a new shape. They sought out rumors of strange howls, claw marks, and inexplicable disappearances. Each new valley, forest, and mountain brought fresh challenges and new dangers. Thanks so much from Cryptid Monologues for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss an update. And hey, while you're here, check out these videos. You'll definitely love them. See you in the next one.